21. What did Job tell his three friends to do finally here in verse 2 of chapter 21? Yeah, listen to me. Hey, listen to what I got to say. Um, they're just going off and stuff. So Job contradicts his three friends by telling what about the wicked here in verse 7. Yeah, they become old. Verse 9, what does he tell them? Yeah, the houses are safe. Verse 13, what about the wicked? Yeah, are wealthy. So we can see here that there's no difference. Job's saying there's no difference between the wicked and those, and his friends are consistently saying, hey, he's wicked. Elphaz in chapter 22 states that Job is wicked. Verse 5, it's because he's gotten rich by taking advantage of whom here in verse 6. Yeah. Verse, right. Basically, he's making up stuff. You're right. Verse 7, how's he getting rich here? What about the hungry? Not feeding them, not giving the weary water. Verse 9. Right. And again, I don't think Elphaz has any proof about all this anyway. So then Elphaz tells Job he needs to turn to what here in verse 23? Or to whom? Yep, the Almighty. Also, Elphaz tells Job that he built his trust in what in verse 24? Yeah, golden riches. Chapter 23, what did Job insist he has done here in verse 11 to 12, chapter 23? Right, his commandments. In other words, I haven't turned aside and hadn't departed from the commandments of God. Chapter 24, just Job lists a bunch of evil things that happen on earth, starting in verse 2, going through verse 11. So what is his conclusion how God handles this in verse 12? Right. So, Job's got this wrong too, but his friends, I mean, this conversation back and forth, it just keeps on going, and his friends consisting that he's evil, he's doing wrong because that's what all this has happened to him, and he's being consistent, saying, "Hey, I'm righteous. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm following God's commandments. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do." So it's just back and forth. Chapter 25, Bildad views God's dominion and majesty, and he devalues man as to what in verse 6 here? Maggots. I think he's basically telling Job what? That he's a maggot, right? Chapter 26, I'm paraphrasing here. Job is telling Bildad, hey, you've been real encouraging to me, telling me that I'm a maggot. Not. So verse 7 through 13, Job describes God's great power. Verse 14 describes how much that has covered concerning how much he has covered concerning God's power, which is what in verse 14? How much of God's power has he covered? Right. Not hardly anything. The edges of his garments, just a whisper. Couldn't even imagine what God's thunder would be like. So chapter 27, who made Job bitter here in verse 2? So as long as Job lives, what will his tongue and lips do in verse 4? Yeah, don't speak wickedness or deceit to God. Verse 6, what does Job insist still and won't let go of? Yeah, he's righteous. His righteousness. Chapter 28, it's a song indicating how significant is God's wisdom. Chapter 29, it talks about Job when he had the hedge around him, how he's blessed and everything. And then chapter 30 is just the opposite. It talks about how he's, what state he's in now. Verse 16 states that concerning his soul, what's his state there in 16? What is his soul? It's poured out, right? What about the affliction, verse 17? Right, yeah, it's taken a hold of him. Verse 18, what about his bones and his garment? He's got groaning, his pain, and verse 18 talks about his garments disfigured. So chapter 31, we get that Job insists his innocence. He invites God to impose these curses on him. Verse 8 is the first curse, which is what? If he's not innocent, what was going to happen? What did he say he would do? About what he planted. Right. And verse 10, what was another curse? Yeah. And verse 22. It's pretty serious, this 22 curse. Yeah. Take his arm off. And then verse 40 is another curse. Right, weeds in the field instead of wheat and barley. So 32, we finally get to another speaker for the first time. It's how do you say it? Elihu? Okay, Elihu. So who was he mad about here in verse 2 and 3? Yeah, Job and his three friends, right? So why did he wait so long to talk? Verse 6 and 7. Yeah, he's the youngest one. He was afraid to talk in front of them. And he pretty much lets everybody have it here in chapter 33, which we'll talk about Sunday. We'll finish up Job Sunday, and we get back in the New Testament for a week or so that'd be good.
Jeff, will you lead us in prayer, please?
Father in heaven, we come in this time and thank you for this time, place
All right, so we started lesson 1 Sunday of our the Bible timeline study, and before we get into kind of the Wednesday night portion, as I sent home the homework material for everybody Sunday, was anybody not here Sunday and they'd like a map here? This was the map. Anybody else? Oh, wow. Bunch of folks. It's the summer, so this was our homework assignment. I handed out Sunday. And what this is, so this map that I'm handing out corresponds to all the maps I'm going to hand out. There is a map, a full-size map in the back of each. Who else need one? There's a full-size map in the back of the book. There's 18 maps in the back of your book, starting on page 84. And all the homework assignments that I hand out, there'll be a corresponding map in the back. And basically what you do is just look at the duplicate map with all the answers and just basically paste it in. And fill in the blank, and what that'll do, just kind of help solidify in our mind where things are. And what we'll do is each map will be a little different, and some of the places will change. Some of the names of the places will change as we're moving. We're going to see like the Bible as we move through time and history. We look at different maps and kind of different perspectives of things. Some of the maps kind of far out as far as the area is concerned, and then some focusing on very specific places. So in filling in, need a little bit more, need my map to be a little darker there for the screen. But so there were some blanks here. What's the area here, the two blanks right here that needed to be filled out right by the sea here? Israel's one, and Jerusalem. So we have the land and then the city. What about over here in the Buda, Italy? What's the main city over here? Rome. That's right. What about this sea right here? That's the Red Sea. What about this sea here? Yeah. What about this land down here? That's Egypt. What about this region up here? That's Ararat. It's interesting in Genesis chapter 8 and verse 4, I was kind of taught a little, as a youngster, the ark rested on Mount Ararat. But that's actually not what it says. It says it rested on the mount, in the mountains, plural, of Ararat. So there's not just one mount, there's a whole mountain chain, as you can see right through here, and so the region is Ararat. There's a major city right here in this area here, and what is going to be, we're going to look at next week, it's called Mesopotamia, or the Fertile Crescent. Mesopotamia means the land between the rivers, those two rivers being the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers. And so what's the major city here? Babylon, that's right, and that's going to play a key role in the story here. What about this area here? What's this land over here? That's Greece. That's right. All right, very good. I think that was all. Oh, there was one down here. There was a land down here that pops up in the Bible once or twice as Sheba, all right? And that's where the queen of Sheba was from. Yeah, so there you go. I threw that one in there. I thought that'd be neat. We sometimes read about these places, and they pop up and we run right past them, but it's cool to me to know where they are. Okay, good. So your homework assignment for next week will just basically be to do the questions on the questions at the end of lesson number 2. So we'll get into lesson number 2 Sunday and talking about the beginning. We're starting the Bible story this next Sunday, and we're going to be talking about plot diagrams, and I'll explain more of that Sunday, but we'll talk about the beginning of the Bible's plot, if we're looking at it as a story, a narrative, and the beginning of the Bible is basically those first 11 chapters of the Bible, and there's some key events that happen, and we'll talk about all of those Sundays, so be ready to do the questions in Lesson 2. But tonight, as advertised from last Sunday, this is something we're going to be doing on Wednesday night as we move through the Bible story, and we look at the Bible as a story. We're looking at something that was historical, that is set in history. And it's helpful for us in our faith to have it confirmed to us, even though we can read the Bible, understand it, and believe it, and that's it. It's good to see the Bible and how it relates to the backdrop of history, because it helps confirm to us and strengthen our faith that the Bible is a real historical narrative. It is history. It's a history book. And so tonight, I'm going to give an introduction to something I'll be hitting on Wednesday nights, and that's Bible archaeology and how it relates to these specific time periods that we're going to go through tonight. And tonight, since the first lesson is an introduction, tonight I'm going to go through why I believe archaeology is so important to this study and how it can really help strengthen our faith. And we'll kind of look at an overview of some amazing discoveries that have been made and how they corroborate the biblical story. What is archaeology, though, if you're going to define it? It's the study of ancient artifacts. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Artifacts that have been dug up out of the ground. So basically, archaeology, you're studying history by studying things you dig up out of the dirt or that you excavate. It's not necessarily digging up out of the ground. It could be something that's just standing there, like a pyramid or a ziggurat. But you're going and you're investigating it, and you're taking your tools and you're brushing things off, and you're looking for languages and any kind of information that you can find to see what kind of history it can tell. One of the amazing things about history and the past is that people kept records of it. And just their way of life is a record, and those things are not completely lost to history. We can go and dig up in the ground. I mean, when I was a young man and we were going down the back roads in our old truck of southeast Texas, there's not a whole lot of dirt roads in Tennessee that I found, but there's a dirt road everywhere in southeast Texas. And on the road, you go and on the road, and if you pick around long enough, you could find an arrowhead laying in the dirt. And maybe you've done that. And just that one thing, if you are educated in that particular area of expertise, you can examine that, and it will tell you something about the people that lived. And so that's what archaeology does. It's an expertise of taking stuff and discovering it from the ancient past and seeing what story it will tell us. And a lot of the history that we're taught, a lot of the things that we know about the past come to us from the study of archaeology. And here's what's cool about it. It happens all the time. People dig up something from the earth, and it tells the same story that's in the Bible. Or it says something that corroborates something in the biblical story. And it's not that we have to have that in order for our faith to exist. But if we already have faith and then we dig up something that talks about someone like King David and how he lived, or it talks about some specific event that happened, or a specific place that's mentioned in the Bible, especially, some of you in here have actually gone overseas and visited these actual places. And, when you go over there, you probably agree with me. I've never been over there, but people that go over there and see these places with themselves, it's like it becomes even more real to you, right? Because you're in those places. And so that's what archaeology does, is is that a lot of times it will corroborate the biblical stories and the places and the people therein. Now, one of the cool things about archaeology is that, and as it relates to the Bible, is that it's still happening all the time. So we haven't dug up everything out of the earth. People are still discovering things. But, you know, as far as the Bible is concerned, there's nothing more to be discovered outside of what's written here. So we have this complete history for us in the Bible. And so because archaeology is incomplete and the Bible is complete, sometimes you'll have places or certain peoples that are unknown to history or archaeology. They're only known to us through the Bible until someone makes a discovery. And we go, and now history realizes, oh, wait, the Bible talked to us about that all along. I'll give you an example of that, and that is the Hittite people. So who were the Hittites? Can anybody tell me who the Hittites were? What, is there a book? Can you give me a book where they're listed, maybe? Okay, you'd find them in the book of Joshua probably. So they have to do with what area of land, would you say, if we go back to this map? It's around Canaan, that's right. So they're one of the many ites that God often, He lists all the ites, And the Hittites are one of the many peoples that's mentioned as living in and around the land of Canaan. In fact, we know now from archaeology, but we didn't used to know it, that the Hittites, this area up here where it says Cilicia, the Hittites were actually a massive empire. Long, long time ago. Absolutely massive. Great, a force to be reckoned with up here sort of north of the land of Canaan. Now, for a very long time, people said, oh, the Hittites don't exist because only the Bible talks about it. Well, discoveries have been made, and now we know they weren't a myth. The Hittite people actually did exist, and like I said, they're a force to be reckoned with. This is two archaeological corroborations of the Treaty of Kadesh. It's an Egyptian and a Hittite treaty. It's actually the oldest surviving peace treaty between anybody. It's between Ramses II and the Hittite king. And the tablet on the left is the Hittite version of it, and the one on the right is the Egyptian version of it. So there's absolutely, and the Hittite nation is, of course, mentioned in the peace treaty because it's about them and involves them. So this is absolute corroborative evidence that they did exist. The Hittites, or at least one man who was a Hittite, played a key role in a biblical story. Y'all remember? Somebody go over to Genesis 23. Genesis 23. And someone read 7 through 11 of Genesis 23. Machpelah. Okay. So here we have Abraham having a very key run-in with the Hittite people. And the plot of ground that he purchases from the Hittite people actually becomes a very well-known place in the story of the Bible because it is where, what? It's where the patriarchs are buried. Abraham and Sarah, later Isaac and Rebekah, And then Jacob and Leah will be buried in this place, in the cave that is near the field of Machpelah, purchased from the Hittite people. So Abraham, when he comes into Canaan, the Hittite people are one of the people that he runs across and that he is with. And you know, it's interesting that we can kind of see this side now from history of the Hittite people. This is a representation of 12 of the Hittite gods of the underworld. And so we find some representation here of something about their religion. Of course, the Canaanites were known for their many, many gods. And of course, we'll talk more about that later as we go through our study. We'll talk a little bit about Baal, because people have found little statues of Baal, and we'll talk about that and some of the other Canaanite gods when we get there. So it's interesting that we can have this kind of historical insight into the people that Abraham ran into so long ago and purchased that plot of ground to bury his wife. As I said, there's a lot of places in the Bible that you can go to today, and some of these places are very key archaeological sites. They're being excavated as we speak. People go over there and they're constantly digging there and learning new things. One of the reasons is because so many of these places, in particular cities, are built on what's known as, basically they're built on these hills and they're called tells. That's kind of the technical term in archaeology for them. A tell, something like a hill. And one of the things about these cities is that they were built over and over and over again, one on top of the other. And what do you think the reason for that is? That's right. So you have somebody come in and conquer it, and then they wipe it out or whatever. They reclaim it, and then they build their own city on top of that, and as time moves on. So at a lot of these places, and this is Jericho, this is called Tel Es Sultan, the site of Jericho. And this is a very key place. And one of the things that has been discovered at Jericho is that the city was burned. Here's an archaeological discovery. The city was burned around the time that they supposed Joshua would have lived. They have found evidence that the city was burned. In fact, there has been sacks of grain that have been discovered at this archaeological site of burnt grain, sort of in the bags. And why would this be important as far as the Bible story of Jericho is concerned? What did Joshua do to the city? Someone want to get Joshua 6:24 through 26 and read that? Joshua 6:24 through 26. That's right. So this was something that Joshua did. He did it with a few other cities too. Can you name any other cities do you know any other cities that he burned? That's all right. That's all right. He burned Ai. Ai was one he burned. Yes. Yes. Yeah, Ai. There you go. Okay, yeah. There's another one that he burned. It's Hazor. And Hazor is a very interesting archaeological site as well that has been excavated. And also, just like Jericho, around the time period, because there's layers and people can look through those layers and look at the different artifacts from those layers and determine through different methods the time period they think it was. And so there's a layer of ash in the layer that they believe was around the time that Joshua would have lived. So in Jericho and in Hazor, you have this ash layer. And what did Joshua do to the city of Hazor in Joshua 11:10 through 11? Burned it to the ground. Burned it to the ground. Yeah. So here we have once again, and this is just one of so many examples where we can read about these biblical stories as history, and then go to the archaeological record and realize there's evidence for this very thing there in the archaeological record. Let me show you another place that is really very important in the biblical story, and that is Shiloh. Anybody tell me what happened at Shiloh or what Shiloh was used for? There you go. Shiloh in the Bible. Turn over to Joshua 18 in verse 1. Joshua 18 in verse 1. I hope I spelled Shiloh correctly. If not, I shall. Yeah, it's got an H on the end. I knew it. There's something did not look right about that. I looked up at that, and I'm like, that just don't look right. Okay. So we have Shiloh, S-H-I-L-O-H. Somebody read Joshua 18, verse 1. All right, so during the wandering in the wilderness, the tent of meeting went basically everywhere. But once they came into the land of Canaan, they were more stationary, right? They didn't have to go anywhere. So they put the tabernacle, and what was that? What was the tabernacle? It's a tent. It's made to be this movable, portable building, but they set it up at kind of a permanent place where people could come to worship. This is before Jerusalem was set up as, the city of David, and then later on, what would be built in the city of David was the temple, and then that would be the place that you would come to worship. But previously to that, it was Shiloh, and because the tabernacle was set up at Shiloh, well, there was a lot of interesting things that happened there. One of the things that happened is it was set up during the sons of during the days of Levi, and not only the days of Joshua, but the judges. And this is where, in this area, this is where, Hannah would have been to pray for her child. It would be where Eli would have been, and Samuel would have been when God came and spoke to Samuel for the first time and called him to be a prophet. And it would also be where Eli would fall off I guess it was the gate or something he was sitting on. He fell off backward when he heard the ark of God had been captured, broke his neck, and died. And his daughter-in-law basically gave birth prematurely there. And so there were a lot of interesting things and nasty things that happened there at Shiloh, but there was also a lot of worship that was done. And so the Shiloh, people have known where it was for a while now, or this spot has been considered to be this hill here that's called Kirbet Shilian. Okay. But this place is known as the place of Shiloh. And, people have speculated, well, if this is the place where the tabernacle was set up, then we would find evidence of that sacrificial system being there. Well, throughout the years, they've been doing excavations there. Just recently, though, this is why I have this one here. I just learned about this week. I ran across a YouTube video that talked about it. It's actually big news in the archaeological circle that they discovered, because we have technology now that we can go down into the ground and see what's in the ground without ever having to dig it up. They found stacks and stacks and stacks of animal bones. Sheep, goat, and cattle. Now, why would that be significant? All the sacrifices. And the particular pieces were oftentimes found the right side of the animal. And the reason why that's significant is because the priestly portion just happened to be the right side of the animal. And so it's gotten people really excited. in the archaeological in that community that believe in the Bible and believe this is the place, because they also think that they found the spot where the tabernacle would have sat. There's kind of like a place that they think it would have been housed in that is pretty much, it's 2 by 1 in its dimensions, or 1 by 2 in its dimensions. It's a rectangle. And so the tabernacle would have been about those dimensions, because it would have been a rectangle divided up into 2 squares, holy place and most holy place. And they've also found, pots and pans and stuff here, and it's just a really exciting thing when people, once again, when people do this, and you're like, these things really happen at these places, guys. These things really happen. And so it's a really neat thing. Now, certain biblical stories are found in the archaeological record, and one in particular, one that has always fascinated me. This is the Taylor Prism that is inscribed by Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, the same Sennacherib that stood at the gate of Jerusalem, or had his army stand at the gate of Jerusalem to defy the people of Israel when who was king? You remember? It was Hezekiah, when Hezekiah was king. Turn over to Isaiah chapter, somebody turn over to Isaiah chapter 36 and read 1 through 6. Isaiah 36, read 1, and then somebody else get Isaiah 37, verses 36 through 38. Isaiah 37, verses 36 through 38. So, whoever gets the first one, go ahead. All right. So he's basically defying them, and he also is going to mock God as well and say you're putting your trust in the wrong God here and everything. And now, do you remember what happens in this story? It's really neat what happens. You remember what Hezekiah does? What would you do in that situation? He inquired of the Lord, and he prayed. He begged God, please, Lord. Help us in this situation. And God came through the word of the prophet Isaiah, and Isaiah said, don't worry, God's got it handled. Sure enough, God did have it handled. Somebody read 36 through 38 of Isaiah 37. That's right. That's right. Yep. Just watch what I'm going to do. Yep. Yep. And so 185,000 people dead overnight. And so Sennacherib returns home. What happens to him when he returns home? His sons kill him. So Yeah, like you said, he ran his mouth off too much, and look at what it got him. God did him in. Now, the reason why the Taylor prism is so important is this was written by Sennacherib, and it was probably written by Sennacherib right before his death, because on this six-sided prism, there's about 8 battles that he describes, or 8, not necessarily battles, but conquests that he writes in which he's bragging on his magnificence. And the one in which he goes up against Jerusalem, he says pretty much, quote, I've got Hezekiah shut up like a bird in a cage. That's what he brags about here. And he mentions Hezekiah on this prism. He says, I got him shut up in there, and I've took away a whole bunch of spoil and tribute from him. And he talks about all the money he got and all the women he got and all the things. But he doesn't necessarily mention taking the city and like completely conquering the city. He just talks about stuff he took away. And so there's kind of some things missing. Now, he doesn't mention his defeat of 185,000 people being killed. And if you're Sennacherib and you're a prideful worldly king, which they all were, why in the world would you wouldn't do it? I mean, none of those guys talked about their defeats. Of course, they're all grand, they're great guys. But there is a historian, a Chaldean historian by the name of Beros, and who is quoted by Josephus. And here, this is a Chaldean, a Babylonian historian that lived a long time ago. He actually talked about Sennacherib, and Josephus, the historian, quotes him. And this Chaldean historian records that Sennacherib mysteriously went home without his army, and that the number he lost was exactly 185,000. It quotes the exact number that's in the Bible that he lost. Now, to me, that's historical evidence right there, corroborating together, the historic and this prism, this Bible story. But there's also something else that's really interesting here. It's that if you just look at one piece of the archaeological evidence, you may not find the full story. There's an old saying that victors write the history books, and that's true. Sometimes it's not just the victors that write the history books. Sometimes people cover up the bad things that happened to them because they don't want the world to know about it many years hence. And I mean, if you're a prideful king, why would you talk about your defeats, Why would you do yourself in that way? And so there is a weakness in archaeology that the Bible doesn't have. And that is, as people stumble in archaeology to find out the truth of the past, they find within that the biases of the people that wrote about the past and their own biases of their own experiences. And the reason why the Bible is always, in the end, the greatest history book of all is because it was written by God, and it just puts events exactly as they happen. And so as we have looked tonight about how important archaeology is and about how important the historical record is that we have found from the ground, let us never forget that we have the greatest historical record that has ever been given to man, and that is the sacred scriptures given to us by God. So thank you for your kind attention tonight.
Good evening. When my love to Christ grows weak. When my love to Christ grows weak, when for deeper faith I seek, then in thought I go to thee, Garden of Gethsemane. There I walk amid the shades, while the lingering twilight fades. See that suffering, friendless one, weeping, praying, there alone. When my love for man grows weak, when for stronger faith I seek, Hill of Calvary I go, to thy scenes of fear and woe. There beyond his agony, suffered on the bitter tree. See his anguish, see his faith, love triumphant still in death. Into life I turn again, learning all the worth of pain, learning all the might that lies in a full self-sacrifice.
Good evening. This part of our worship service has been set aside to extend the invitation of Christ to those that may be here that are not Christians, to give you an opportunity to think about the things you must do in order to become a Christian, and also for those that may already be Christians that may desire the prayers of the saints here and in your subject. We get an opportunity to respond in just a few moments. My invitation tonight is going to be a little different than I normally do in extending the invitation. As I've had some things in my mind lately, and I want to share those with you tonight. It seems so many of our group here in recent months have been going through a lot of suffering, a lot of physical ailments that have been out there, some that have gone through surgeries, going through treatments, other ailments, physical ailments that have affected people, and they're suffering. There also have been a lot that have lost loved ones and are grieving, from losing a spouse to losing a parent, a grandparent, a sibling, other family members, close friends. Seems like just in the last 2 or 3 months, it's been a lot for our group here. And one thing that I've noticed in talking to a lot of you that have gone through this, that's really stood out to me, is you saying the way I'm getting through this is through the love of the people here in the congregation. And sometimes we don't realize the small things, how much they mean, and how much they can give comfort and strength and love to someone in need. Like a card, just sending a card, a little note in it. Sending a text or a phone call. I mean, someone mentioned to me just a hug. Just getting a hug, that means a lot. Or, whatever it may be that you do, how important it is for these folks to be able to get through and get on with their lives. Because we all know at some point in our lives we're going to be going through the same thing. It may not be this week or this month or this year, but we're all going to be in a similar situation. So I want to encourage you to continue to do that, to show your love for others. It makes me feel good to know that we're such a loving group. And I truly believe also that when God put together the idea of a local church, that was one of the reasons why, so we could be there for one another. So I want to encourage you to continue to do that and show love to one another. There's also other ways that we can certainly see comfort and strength, and that's through some scriptures that are in the Bible. There are many of them. I chose 4 of them tonight to read to you, but I'd like to read those to you. 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 through 4. It says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God." What a great couple of verses right there talking about comfort and strength. Also Romans 8:28, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." John 14:27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Psalms 34:18, you see this a lot on pictures and stuff. "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." God is always present, offering strength and comfort in times of our need. Whether you're facing personal challenges or seeking solace for someone else, these scriptures can provide hope and assurance. The second thing that I wanted to talk about tonight, the last 2 or 3 months, we've lost 3 great men of this congregation. Harry Keithline, David Barker, and Les Weinbrenner. All 3 of these men have meant so much to me, and they've been encouragements to me. Unfortunately, I didn't know Brother Harry, but just the last several years that he attended here. But man, what an encouragement he was, and hope he was to every one of y'all, because the man was suffering. His ailments and his things that were going on with his body, but it didn't stop him. I remember the night that he wanted to be baptized, and the struggle we had getting him down the steps into the water, and then the water being really cold, but it didn't stop him. He wanted to be baptized that night. And to see him want to be here as much as he could was so encouraging. I know I talked to Tracy at his funeral, and she said, you know, he wanted to be there so much more. He wanted to be involved, but he just couldn't. But, you know, when he could, he made sure he was there. And what a great example he was for us. Now, the other 2 men, Brother David and Brother Les, have been in my life most of my life, over 40-something years. And I can truly say both of those men love God. They love the Scriptures. They loved this church, and they loved each and every one here. And they both were great examples. They were elders. I was under their eldership in 2 different locations, and what great men they were. I'm really going to miss all 3 of these men. And I hope we all can look at them and strive to be examples like they all have been. Their memories are going to live within this group for years to come. And we've got to be molding the future around memories of men like them. And I don't think any of their families are here tonight, but, you know, continue to pray for their families and pray for the others that have lost loved ones recently. And thank you for letting me get that off of me. It's kind of been on my mind, and wanted to share that with you. I haven't said anything tonight about becoming a Christian, but becoming a Christian is very simple. The plan of salvation is that you hear the Word of God, Romans 10:17. So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Then you must believe with your heart that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Hebrews 11:6. For without faith it is impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Then you must repent of your sins. Luke 13:3. I tell you, nay, unless you repent, you all likewise perish. Then you must confess with your mouth that you do believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. Romans 10:10. For with the heart one believes into righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made into salvation. And then you must be baptized, be immersed in water for the remission of your sins. Mark 16:16. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be condemned. So all you have to do is have the courage to come forward, and we'd be happy to assist you. Maybe some here that are not Christian or that are already Christians that may desire the prayers of the saints here, but any of your subject, please come as we stand and sing.